your attraction and your ability to get new people into your office is directly linked to your certainty around what it is that you do in your office.
Hello, and welcome to Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. This podcast is dedicated to chiropractors who are in the seasons of launching and building their practice. Join myself, Dr. Lona, and my co-host, Dr. Bobby, as we have conversations each week as it relates to building the practice of your dreams. And remember, you can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. We're here to lead you on the way.
What's up, team? Welcome back to the Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast with the amazing Dr. Lona Cook. Dr. Lona, what's going on? How you doing?
Hey, I'm hanging out in Mexico, so it's a good day. I'm getting to be in the sun, a little sunburn, got a massage, living the life.
Sounds like a tough life at the moment, huh?
Yeah. How about you?
So we have big expectations from Dr. Lona on the episode today, guys, because she's on vacation. So we are ready to rock and roll. So with the amazing Dr. Lona and myself, Dr. Bobby. Dr. Lona, I'm doing fantastic. I've had 3 weekends in a row of weddings now. So it's definitely wedding season here in Oz. So I am all weddinged out for the moment. I've had 3 weekends in a row and each one has 300 plus people at weddings. So we didn't do anything small where I'm from. Everything's done in high volume, including weddings. So it's been good fun, that's for sure.
You're recouping today. Mm-hmm.
Totally. So you and I were chatting about this and we decided, you know what? I want to unpack this in a lot of detail. And I'm really pumped for these next couple of episodes that are coming up. A, because you're on vacation. So I know we're going to get pearls of wisdom out of you. You're fresh and recharged and ready to rock and roll. But B, it's a topic that I know is a huge topic that people, including myself, always have a lot of questions around. And what we're going to talk about today, guys, is you hear us in the Remarkable Practice all the time say that practice essentially is made up of 4 pillars. And those pillars are attraction, conversion, retention, and team building. These are the 4 pillars of practice building. And quite frankly, when you get them lined up, your office will explode. And be careful how you define success, because I understand on this podcast, we're going to get people in all sorts of models. They're going to say, you know what, success is, I want to get to 120 visits a week, and then I want to get 5 associates that are doing that. My technique, my model is aligned and congruent with that. Then there's going to be other people that I know reach out to us already and say, Bobs, I want to see 500, 600, 700 on my own. I'm like, that's cool. I get it. That was me in those early days. I was like, give me 1,000 a week. I can see 1,000 on my own. This is great fun, right? And it doesn't matter which category you fit in. What we're about to unpack right now today is going to apply to you in a massive way. And that is new patient attraction, new patient marketing. Because here's one thing that I know when we go through chiropractic and we talk to different chiropractors, and tell me, Dr. Lona, is this your experience? But the number one question that I hear time in and time out in chiropractic is, how do I get more new patients inside of my office? In fact, yesterday alone, I had 2 inbox messages from chiropractors who I just kind of know a little bit around the circles. Both questions in my inbox asking for help are around new patient attraction. How do I get more newies in? Whether it's to get myself to capacity or get my newest associate to capacity. We know that it's the big question in chiropractic. Dr. Lona, I'd love to know a little bit about new patient attraction in your office right now at the moment, your offices. Take us through a little bit about, all right, where do you find the majority of new patients flow from? And then I'm going to share the same in my office. And then I want to talk to you guys about a concept that's really helped, I know, both of us, just supercharge our new patient results. So I'd love to know a little bit about marketing in your office. What does it look like? Where are your newies coming from?
Yeah. So, prior to joining TRP, I never really thought super hard about where new patients were coming from. I knew I had to go out initially, find them by meeting them. And I have said many times before, it's kind of like a popularity contest in the beginning of how many people can I meet, whether that's in putting on a talk or going to a chamber or BNI meeting, whatever it is, right? And then at some point, for many of us, especially if we're maybe by ourselves in practice as far as no other DCs, it turns into where most of your new patients most likely are coming from referral sources. And maybe you're not even working that hard at getting referrals, but you're giving great care and you're doing this thing called chiropractic. And now all of a sudden your external marketing might dip down, but your internal marketing has replaced that flow of new patients. Well, as I started to scale and realize that there was going to be multiple doctors in an office and multiple offices, referral worked as far as it was still a steady stream. But as we've looked at well, how do you make the right production for the number of doctors under one roof? We really had to step into understanding this thing called attraction and marketing, and that there is more than one pillar, AKA there is more than internal referrals that we should be systematically cultivating. And so we had to get a lot better at being intentional about, first of all, like referrals being a methodical thing, not just a random occurrence of like, maybe they're going to send someone in, but we haven't really asked them. And then also starting to realize that I had to, just like I wouldn't, do a day 1, day 2 in a helter-skelter way, we couldn't think about marketing anymore from just a kind of like, well, if someone asked us to speak, we'll speak. Or, if we lack new patients last month, now we get back on the marketing train. It's like, no, there needs to be a systematic, repeatable system in place for all 3 areas. How about you, Bobby? I know this is a big topic for you, and that's why so many people ask you about it too.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I agree. I read that this research was done about 20 years in chiropractic. And when I heard this, what I'm about to share with you now, I did my own little investigating and researching and found it to be relatively accurate, right? When I say relatively, give or take within about 15 up to 20%. Some offices can fall outside this rule, but I've adopted this rule. I love this one. I'm now future casting and I'm kind of setting goals. And there was this research that was done that looked at offices that were at 250 a week, 500 a week, 750 a week, 1,000 plus a week. And they wanted to see what these offices had in common. And what they found is that there was 5 primary things they had in common. I'm not going to share all 5. Maybe that's an episode for another time. But one thing that they had in common is the amount of new people that they were seeing every single month inside their office. And it was crazy. They found this rule called the rule of tens that existed. And the rule of tens showed that the offices roughly that were on 250 visits a week were roughly getting about 25 to 30 new patients a month, right? They found that the offices that were on 500 visits a week were roughly getting about 50 to 60 new patients a month. And then all the way up to the offices that were 1,000 plus visits a week, and they were getting continuously about 100 plus new patients a month. And so I looked at that with a lot of the offices that I was working with and looked at my own offices. I was like, man, this rule of 10 thing, right? Like, absolutely, like there's an accuracy to it. And so very early in my practice days, my new patients, it was a struggle. Like literally, I opened up in Sydney where I think I got the worst piece of advice I ever had in my life, which was, look, if you just kill enough time and wait, enough people will eventually find you and they'll make their way into the office and you'll build a practice base, right? And so some of the worst advice I ever got from a friend, right? A podiatrist, not a chiropractor at all. And, that was a good excuse for me to do nothing for a period of time. But the reality is that's not the truth. And I love what you said there in terms of absolutely, internal referrals and organically growing new patients should always be a pillar of your office. And I love when people say to me, yeah, we are 100% internal referral based. Great. But you know what I say to them? How much of the pie are you missing if you actually added other things and compounded on top of that? In fact, in my office, we work really hard on this law. We call it the Parlay effect. And the Parlay effect is every single new patient that we get inside of our office, we want to get at least 2 other new people from that person internally through our systems, which means if I go out and do an external talk and bring in 20 new patients from that external talk, by the time those new people go through our onboarding process, which means our pre-day 1 process, by the time they go through our day 1, we build our systems in day 1 in a very specific way that it plants seeds for referrals that the whole time through. I'm not asking straight away and saying, great, hey, Dr. Lona, let's get your family in. But we definitely have a way of planting seeds, planting seeds, planting seeds. And sometimes we harvest the fruit immediately on day 1. Sometimes we harvest it on day 2, right? Other times we'll harvest a lot at our Better Results Faster workshop when people start care inside of our office. And other times we'll harvest at table talk or progress exams or progress reports, especially early on in the process. But the reality is that we have a system that I know if I get 20 people from an external, any kind of external marketing I do, by the time that they work out their way through our onboarding process, I want to see another 40 generated internally because it gives me access to 20 people's networks. Mm-hmm. And so when I learned to do that parlaying effect, that's when things just exploded for us, right? And we'll have months, now where we're 140 plus new patients a month. And the reality is a large part of that is internal referral. But even those internal referrals are arriving in the office a lot of the time because we found someone that they know through external events that we did. Right? So it expanded our sphere of influence, quite frankly. Yeah. So right now, if you look at our internal systems, I would say there's a beautiful mix between digital, external. So we do a lot of digital. We do it really well. External in terms of getting out in the community with speaking. And we still do some screening. We have a screening team. And then we parlay all of that with our internal referrals and just getting all the family members of the people that are coming inside our office as well. Has your experience been the same with that? I know that you, with your systems, have really kind of nailed that in the last kind of couple of years, right?
Yeah, that was a big change for us in the last, I would say, 2 years. It wasn't like the thing that I tackled at first when we were kind of like revolutionizing to the next level with TRP's help. It was like, we realized like, well, we've got a steady stream of new patients from internal, and we were doing some digital and some external, but it wasn't leveraged anymore. As far as like external, we didn't have like a supercharged rhythm to it. And so we first like decided, all right, we're going to bite off over this next 6 months, like getting digital to the next level and utilizing some of the like success partners, et cetera, to make that happen. And then this past year has been like external. So we started doing dinner talks again. And so it's no surprise, I'm on vacation. My team just hit a best this week. And it's partially because A, I have an awesome team. That's a big part of it. And B, we got our marketing systematized to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And we're the same. We're coming off a massive week. We just had 31 newies in the last week. And then I look at the momentum that builds. And the next week, we've got a dinner. You spoke of dinners. We got our dinner booked. And we're already pre-booked at 59 or 58 people. So that capacity of our restaurant is 50. So we overpack it knowing that 50 are going to get there. And it's just the best feeling in business when you know, all right, you look at your weeks ahead and there's a whole bunch of new people that are already on the books that are coming in, right? And you can look not just a few days ahead, but weeks and weeks ahead and go, man, we are pumping right now and serving so many people and helping save so many lives. But look how many new people are banging on our doors actually to come in and get what we have. And so I want to talk for that reason about a concept today, because the reality is, Lona, we all know this. There's no shortage of people, unfortunately, that are sick, suffering, and dying that need our help. Okay. Unfortunately, guys, there is no shortage of people that have been over-medicated, that are living the wrong paradigm. And you know what? Innately actually understand their body is intelligent and is designed to be healthy. They just don't associate that with chiropractic. They don't understand, well, why would I see a chiropractor, right, to help me with my health? I don't have back pain, or maybe I do have back pain, but it just comes and goes. So it's no big deal, right? And so what we want to talk about today is, before we go in the future into any systems, right? We both just spoke about dinner workshops. Before we go through and unpacking dinners, we want to unpack this concept around attraction. And this is what we say. We say that in order to blow up your marketing and to get an abundant flow of new people inside of your office every week, however many you desire, you need to master this, okay? And that is, purely and simply, that your attraction is a reflection of your certainty. And you should underline that word certainty, okay? Your attraction and your ability to get new people into your office is directly linked to your certainty around what it is that you do in your office. So, Dr. Lona, I'd love for you to share with us, like, what does that actually mean? Because when I hear that, my attraction, reflection, my certainty, okay, that kind of makes sense to me, but I need it unpacked more for me. I'd love for you to explain for everyone listening in, like, my attraction, reflection, my certainty, what does that mean? And how can I help use that now to improve my new patient attraction?
Yeah. And Bobby and I were just talking about this before we jumped on, like, you could kind of divide certainty into 4 different areas. But before we even doing that, think about, what does certainty as a word even mean to you? Like, why do I do what I do? Know what I know? Like, why does this exist? Right. It's kind of like getting into that, like, how do I know that I know that I know? And so when we kind of unpack that further, it's like, well, some DCs especially, like, really hang their hat on the clinical certainty. Like, I love technique. I know exactly where to adjust. I know that my line of drive is this way. I know that this person is going to need a solid X number of Y months of care, numbers of adjustments, like that piece of, like, I know that I can help this person. And that, obviously, the longer we're in practice, generally means it's getting deeper and deeper, because we have some repetition and some clout behind, I've seen this before. So I think that's a struggle for new docs a lot of times. Is like, gosh, I don't know if what I'm delivering, can I deliver the goods? Do I know if I can help this person? And then we jump into philosophical certainty. Like, again, like this, like, beautiful philosophy we have in chiropractic of understanding, like, why we adjust and why we trust the body to be self-healing, self-regulating. And just like, I talk a lot about, like, this is your root on some level of, like, the paradigm shift that we're offering our people. And then the third one is communication certainty. So again, like, knowing nuances between why you say certain things or why you wouldn't say certain things. And how do you also use things like nonverbal communication to help the whole process be understood, whether that's when you're out in the community and offering for someone to come in, or maybe sometimes it's like not saying things at certain times, just understanding like, who am I actually speaking to? And how do I help lead this person? Same thing with your team. And then the last one is the business acumen of like, do I have the system and the setup and the model to deliver this, this whole thing that we're offering? And so all of us, again, with all four of these things, as we are longer in practice and the work that hopefully we're doing on the back end to grow these areas, we can see that it starts to produce more fruits to the labor.
Yep, absolutely. I love it. So just to repeat what Dr. Lona said, we found that there's 4 pillars of certainty, and each chiropractor draws certainty from one of these 4 pillars. Now, obviously, like when I heard Dr. Lona go through that, all 4 of those on some level resonate with me. But what we find is that there's usually one pillar that's your primary dominant pillar. And so I'd encourage you, as you hear that and you go back and re-listen to this, to identify what's your primary pillar of certainty. Okay, what's your strength already? And then lean into that and make it even stronger. Okay, so the 4 pillars of practice certainty, we draw our certainty from one of these 4 pillars, guys. Here's what they were. Number 1 was clinical certainty. These are the clinicians. The more you know about the research, the clinic, why am I doing this, the more certain you get. Number 2 is philosophical certainty. These are the philosophers. When we understand chiropractic is based on universal principles and tenets, oh man, that gets us fired up. Number 3 is what we call communication certainty. These are our communicators. The more that we learn how to get a message across and influence, the more certainty that brings into us, and then you can put us in front of a room of people. And then number 4 is business acumen. These are our entrepreneurs, these are our business people. And the more that we understand the business model of chiropractic, attraction, conversion, retention, team building, which really translates to marketing, that's attraction, lead generation, right? New patient generation. Conversion, that's sales, right? Retention, that's client in business world, customer experience, right? And then we've got team building, which is HR. So these are the pillars, guys, in business. And when you understand that each of these has systems around them, that ultimately, that brings more certainty inside of you, right? So I would say identify for you when you hear those, which is the one that resonates with you. And one of the things that I did in my early days is I really lent into that. And I'd love to get your insight on this, Lona. So in the early days when you were like, okay, I want to get more new patients in. I want to see more new people inside of my office. My certainty, I know it's kind of at a certain level. What was something that you did that you can share with us that really helped supercharge your certainty, take it to the next level? And then, I don't know if I'm putting you in the spot here, but is there an example or a story where you're like, and then that bang helped me in this situation to execute this system, which brought in these new patients?
Yeah. I think I probably could, if I was unpacking all 4 of them, I could find a different example of each one. I do remember at a certain point when I was initially trying to do like a volumetric lift in my practice, that a mentor said to me, like, when you squeeze what comes out? You're a chiropractor. When you get squeezed, it should be chiropractic that comes out. You need to get deeper in the philosophy. And that lent itself to also me becoming a much better communicator. So I remember seeking out, and still do, where I will just go sit in places like New Beginnings or some of these places that have always had a root in the philosophy. And as I just got to like sit there and be immersive in that, year after year, because it took some repetition of going and bringing my team, it's like now all of a sudden it started to become me. And so it started to like influence how I would deliver pretty much everything in the practice, because I was so much more convicted around this philosophy of chiropractic. So for me, that lent itself to growing the next 100 visits in the practice, and really then also having a purpose to like scale. So for me, that was a big one. Yeah. How about you, Bobby?
So I remember for me, people would say, if you don't have truckloads of certainty, borrow it from somebody else. So communication was definitely a pillar that I lent in and leveraged a lot, right? And I still do to this day. But I remember I used to borrow other people's certainty. And then it doesn't matter whether I was at a spinal screening and someone would come to me and say, hey, my child has, got asthma and they just haven't developed and they've been an unhealthy kiddo for the last kind of 3 years. Can you help with this? And even though I hadn't personally seen that, we're talking like my first week or first months in practice, right? I would borrow other people's certainty and I'd be like, absolutely. Why? Because I knew, here we go, ready? Philosophical pillar. I knew that at the end of the day, chiropractic was just a universal principle or a law, right? And what do I mean by that? Well, it's really simple. I figured out early on, because I started off by doing a science degree before I got into chiropractic, right? And in science, they talk about this thing called deductive reasoning. And deductive reasoning means if you know two truths, you can deduce a third truth, right? So for example, truth number one, we know that every tissue in the body requires a blood supply. Truth number two, we know that the heart is a tissue of the body. Therefore, we deduce that if coronary artery, right, which supplies blood to the heart, gets clogged, we should perform highly invasive surgery on that individual. Now, there's no double randomized controlled trials around operating on healthy hearts with people that don't realize they've been operated on, all right, and unhealthy hearts, people that also don't realize they're operating on, and surgeons don't realizing which one's healthy and unhealthy. So there's no such thing as double-blinded randomized control, right, for open heart surgery. So why do we do it? We do it because of deductive reasoning. So I was like, well, that totally makes sense. There's no double randomized control trials in parachutes either, right? They didn't throw people out of the air, no parachutes, but they deduced, well, hang on, wind resistance, right? Okay, we know that's a real thing. We know that there's a certain amount of resistance that's needed to get someone to land safely. We know these two truths, which has been measured. So let's throw people out of an airplane and test parachutes, right? On dummies first, probably on humans second. And we do that every day. So when I learned that, I was like, that's totally true. So chiropractic, universal law and truth. Every tissue in the body requires nerve supply, full stop, every single one, right? Truth number two, that nerve supply always has to go from the brain through the spinal cord, out the spinal nerves, different parts of the body. So therefore, we can deduce that if something happens to the spine, that necessarily can start to interfere with the nervous system and the spinal cord. Just like if someone has, here's another example, a major brain trauma, right? Let's say they hit their skull, unfortunately, because the brain's inside the skull, that can create major trauma to the brain. No one argues that, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I learned that, Lona, I was like, oh my God, okay, this is just universal laws and truth and principles. So I guess philosophical certainty. And then at that moment, I realized that it doesn't matter who I talk to. Yesterday, I had in my office for a new patient, a cardiologist had come in with his son. And his son was mildly on the spectrum, 11, 12 years old. The mum actually brought him in. So the mum is a long-time practice member of ours. She's a solicitor or a barrister. And she booked the son in for an assessment. I could tell in the assessment when we went through our assessment protocols that things were just not kind of quite adding up. You know, his thermography, EMG scans were lighting up. His ability to like how he was processing information was at a delayed rate. His delay in like development was at a delayed rate. Like all these things to us as a chiropractor that stick out like, you know, like no tomorrow. And, you know, him and his mum are coming in wearing face masks all the time. I'm like, okay, so let's get him checked. So we get him checked. And I asked the mum, hey, anything, have you noticed in his development? Have you noticed anything in his progression, right? Like, and the mum's almost blind to it. Like, God love her. She's like, no, all relatively fine. And then she comes in for the report yesterday, and her husband's a cardiologist. So she comes with her husband, a cardiologist, to the report, right? And we're going through, this particular person's report. And I won't go through details of it, but the cardiologist sitting there, and the whole time he's like, yep, that's right. Yep, that's right. Everything Dr. Bobby's saying is correct. Absolutely, right? And in the end, they sum him to a care plan, right? He started with a 36 adjustment care plan, cardiologist's son, right in front of the dad, the cardiologist being there. And, you know, I look at that, where does it come from? It's my certainty in the philosophy of what we do, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's in front of me. I'm just communicating truth. I'm communicating universal laws and principles. So when I realized that, and there's a real life example of like how it manifests, suddenly the dad, the cardiologist, guess what he's done?
Started care.
Booked in as a new patient. You got it. It's coming in next to a new patient, right? So yeah. There's an example of your attractions reflection of your certainty, because I didn't sit through that and subordinate to him and kind of go, oh, he's a cardiologist, oh, this, that. No. In fact, when he came in, I welcomed him. I was like, oh, Colin, I'm glad that you're here, because I know you understand a lot of this stuff, right? So I'm going to explain this to you. So, Cole, they probably taught us all, right? There's one system that controls everything in the body, including the heart. What is that? And he's like, the nervous system, spot on the mark, right? So, you know, that's a classical example. And I do that all the time. That's just like one that sticks out of my head, but that's a classical example of your attractions reflection of your certainty.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And again, like if you didn't have clinical certainty, like they all bleed together on some level. Because you could have deep philosophy, but if you don't have the knowledge that maybe you're like, oh, I'll send them to this other person who can deliver the goods, right? So it's like wherever you're deficient, also we got to bring that up.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. So your attraction, if you want to supercharge it, guys, the one thing you got to do is you got to supercharge your certainty. So Lona, what I'd love from you is share with us, okay, what are some things that you found helpful, or what would you recommend? So I'm somebody that's looking to increase my certainty now, take to the next level. Maybe, I know there's two different kinds of people. I'm just kicking off in practice and I'm like, oh, I'm like how Dr. Bobby was in the beginning. I'm like low certainty. Like, what are some things that I should do? Like, give me some tangible things. And on the flip side, and we can both share this if you like as well. All right, hang on. I'm someone who's doing well in practice. Okay, maybe I've got like already one chiropractor. Oh, sorry, well, I've got one or two associates, right? So I'm at capacity or close to. I've got two associates and I'm filling them up. And I want to take our marketing to the next level. Like you guys said in the front of the call, I want to get 100 newies in a month so we can start making our way towards 1,000 visits a week, right? What are some tools that I should do? What are some action steps that I should do in that scenario to increase my certainty, take my traction to the next level?
Such good questions. Well, I think, as we were sort of alluding to, like, as you think about what am I most certain in, maybe for you, it's like, I'm the most certain in delivering the goods. Like, I have a great technique, I can give a great adjustment, but I feel the least certain in, like, what do I do in business? I don't know how to like do this thing called chiropractic business and wear my business hat or my marketing hat. So I would take stock of like where you feel the most deficient and then make that a goal in the next 12 months that you're going to actively pursue improving that. So, I think back on like certain parts of my journey thus far in chiropractic, and there were certain seasons where I poured more into my clinical certainty, or there were certain seasons where I took communication extra seminars, so part of that is looking at yourself introspectively and then taking action around it and looking at the area that you've been most certain in and realizing there's probably a difference between how you've pursued that region of your chiropractic acumen versus maybe an area that you're like, well, I've kind of suppressed having to put much energy into that. And then the second question, Bobby, you said like, what about if you're doing quite well in practice and maybe you even got a couple associates, is like, well, what's their certainty like? Is there an area that each one of them really excel in and they could be sharing their knowledge with each other to like build the whole team up? And also, is there an area within your group of practicing DCs that like is an area that maybe everyone needs a little fine tuning on? So those would just be my thoughts. How about you?
Well, I just want to reiterate something there because you just said something that's an absolute golden nugget that I don't want people to miss. The first part I'll cover in a second, but the second part you said something really stuck out for me. So when you said, sure, you've got a team and you're doing really well, what's their certainty like? That for me sticks out like no tomorrow. And the reason why is because the key, guys, to business building and really scaling, not just a chiropractic office massively, but any office massively, is team. Because really business building should just be called team building, because that's the 1 + 1 = 2 effect. Equals 3. Napoleon Hill spoke about that. 1 + 1 = 3. When the two people, when the ones are both aligned with core values and with vision. That's how, at the end of the day, I'm one person. Doesn't matter how good I am, I'm still one person with a certain amount of time, energy, and money in my day, right? Whereas where I'm infinitely scalable is when I find people that I'm aligned with and together we all work, right? So like last week, if you have a look, in our office, we had, I don't know the exact number, but it's north of 30 new patients inside of our office last week. And where did they come from? They came from the collective efforts of multiple people. We have a new business development manager that's orchestrating and running everything. Okay. We have 5 DCs. Okay. Of those DCs, 2 are business builders, which means they're great at being able to get in the phone, call leads, book people in, right? Go to and do an external talk. And we've got 1 who's what we call an SUV, can do that, but also loves to be a caregiver. And then we've got 2 who are just absolute caregivers, love giving care and don't necessarily like the business side of things. So there's a collective effort. Then we've got a COO who runs and manages all those people. And then we've got myself sitting in a CEO position who's vision casting, motivating, inspiring, right? It's like, it takes a tribe to do that. And it's absolutely gold what you just mentioned there, because if you are rocking it already, but you want to just take it to the next level, you're going to be doing that through your team. And so your job then as a leader is to look at the energy of your team, look at the certainty of your team, and find ways about how do I increase their levels of certainty so they're just as motivated as pumped as I am. And I guarantee one of those 4 pillars is where you're going to be able to do that. Yeah. So that was huge. In answer to your question on the first part, so I'm just someone that's starting off, right? So I can speak into this to a degree, and I'd love to get further insight from you on this as well. So knowing that there's the 4 pillars, right? So I'm just starting out. Okay, I get it, guys. I can draw more pillars. I can draw more certainty from clinical. I can draw it more from philosophical. I can draw it more from communication. I can draw it more from business acumen. My advice to you would be, okay, start leaning into all four. And the way that you do that ultimately is start mingling and matching with other people and putting it in your tribe that have bucket loads of certainty in those areas. So if you want to find someone that has, truckload of certainty when it comes to clinical, great, engage in a clinical technique, right? Some people in here are very corrective in natures, others are more tonal. Okay, find out what it is for you, engage in that, right? Go all in on that. If you want to learn to improve your communication, your business acumen, right? Your philosophical, lean in, get in contact with people like Dr. Lona, get in contact with people like myself. Like in the Remarkable Practice, we make it a point to make sure that we build the tribe with people that have truckloads of this. And you'll find some of the most successful practices in the world within the TRP tribe. And that's a very, very real reason why we do that, because we know that if you stick your hand in a pot of glue, okay, something's going to stick to it. So getting to like live immersions, getting coaching, I'm just going to be very, very front on here. Get coaching, get training, invest in yourself. The number one investment you can make in day one is yourself, right? I was speaking to a DC yesterday. I was like, oh, really hungry and motivated. I want to do this. And then, I want to get married. I want to get a mortgage and buy a house. I'm like, and I kind of questioned him a little bit on the mortgage and the house. I'm like, okay, there's different ways that you can do that. One thing that we see all the time is the number one investment you can make when you're first out is yourself. Because what kind of house you want to buy? And he was kind of like, well, I'd love to buy a house from like, 1 million, 1.1 mil, as you know, in Sydney, houses are crazy. Okay, great. Or you could really turn into a machine with your mindset understanding, okay, wait 2 or 3, 4, and go buy a $3 million house or a $4 million house, right? If that's your goal or your desire, right? So for me, I'm like, the way that you do that is you lean in with other people and you borrow from them. Has that been your experience as well, Lona?
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of like you wear other people's clothes until your own can fit, right? Like, so it's like, I'm going to cloak myself in Bobby's certainty because I trust him, like you said. And so your mentors become really important. And the other thing to realize is sometimes we want someone else's influence on a decision where they actually shouldn't maybe be weighing in on our certainty there. So that's another thing early on that we've got to check ourselves is like, am I actually asking a question from someone that I think has the ability to give me a solid input, so someone who's maybe got business problems themselves that you don't want yourself isn't maybe who you go to for business acumen and business certainty. So keeping aware of who you're asking your questions to and whose cloak you're wearing at times sometimes is the first step.
Ooh, that was massive. Absolutely massive. Be careful who you're leaning in for advice from, because there's plenty of well-meaning people in our lives, right, that mean well for us. Parents, previous teachers, right, that mean well for us, but they're giving their opinion based on their experience and their level of knowledge, which might not be, pardon me, at the level that's needed to solve the problem that you currently have.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is such a good one. I feel like we could do certainty for a few episodes.
Yeah, I know, 100%. I get it. I agree too. So I've got one final question for you. So I'm looking to crank up my attraction. So I want to take it to the next level, regardless of where I'm at the moment. What's one thing that I should start off with right now? Is it, okay, first thing I should do is sit down after this episode and just in my head, get clear with which one of those 4 pillars it is the next thing that I should do. Like, oh, I'm clear with that. Okay, what do I do after that? Like, I'm someone that wants to take my marketing up to the next level this year. I know that you guys are speaking about that in your offices, Dr. Lona, as well. Where should I start? Where's my first starting point if I want to see more new patients in 2024 or beyond?
Well, I think you got to be really honest about how much energy you've put into it in the past, because what I'm noticing in some of the docs that I'm working with too is like, there's probably because lack of certainty, somewhat of a mental game that needs to be overcome first, which is like, there's the like pain of not changing. And then there's the like discomfort of like, I'm doing some things that are outside my comfort zone. Sometimes asking for help to become more certain feels pretty uncomfortable. So I would say the first step, I would get really honest with myself of like, where have I been playing safe? Or where have I been playing small and not being willing to step into the energy it's going to require to go from whether that's 10 new patients a week to 15 new patients, whatever that is. Maybe it's 2 new patients a week and you want to go to 4. There's going to be a different energy that's present to bring that into fruition.
Yep, absolutely. Spot on. And here's what I love. If I ask myself the same question, I would answer it like this. Well, it depends, first of all. Do you want to use time, energy, or money as a resource that you exchange, or all 3? Because in the early days, if you'd ask me that, I would say, I don't have that much money. I've just kind of come out of school with this massive debt. I don't have that much money, so I've got plenty of time and energy though. So like I'm ready to go. If you ask me now, I would say, well, I have all three. I have time, energy, and money. So, but it's about not just spending it, aimlessly. It's about investing it in the right area, in the right quantity. So here's what I love about marketing. And this is the last thing that I'm going to add in this. And that is that at the end of the day, for me, marketing is so simple because it's all just a numbers game, right? It really is that simple, which means if you're doing, let's say, even an external event, let's say you've got a spinal screening booked, okay? It's a numbers game. You can break down how much did it cost you to have the stall, how much did it cost you to get all the equipment, how much did it cost you to be there, include your wage of what you should pay yourself to be there, right? And then divide that by how many new patients you signed up, and you'll get a new patient acquisition cost. And the new patient acquisition costs should sit at a certain level. So if I said to you, hey, Dr. Lona, I'm going to give you 10 new patients, right? That at first might sound great, and Lona might be like, fantastic, right? And then if I say they're free, they're people that just started carrying my office, they're moving all to your state or your city right there, they're free, just take them. You'd be like, hell yeah, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what if I said to you, I'm sending you 10 new patients, Dr. Lona, and you'd be like, all right, great, but they're $25,000.
Like,
Well, you'd kind of break that down and go, hang on, if you're sending me 10, they're $25,000, that's $2,500 new patient acquisition cost. No thanks, right? Because if you know your business model, right? If you know your business model and you know how much a new patient acquisition cost should be, then you know that that isn't the scalable model. You shouldn't be spending at all costs to get new patients inside of your office. So I love marketing because it's a numbers game. And now with digital, it's even easier. You're putting ads out there. I know you are. It's costing you a certain amount of money. Okay, well, what's the click-through rate? If you want to get really, really granular, how many people are seeing that and clicking on the ad? That tells you how effective the ad is. Of the ones that are clicking on it, what percentage are actually leaving their details? Of the ones leaving their details, what percentage are actually booking in as new patients? Every step of the way, you can actually test and see this and get your numbers and get your feedback, right? So, yeah, my advice is, first step, surround yourself with people that are masters in your business and masters in your area. And then when you start installing the systems, numbers give you all the feedback that you need. And then you're able to make this intelligent decisions moving forward when it comes to your marketing attraction.
that was awesome, Bobby. I feel like there's another episode too. Get us unpacked and like looking at our marketing costs.
Oh, we're going to go there. Don't worry. We are going to be going there. We're going to be unpacking. We're going to be referencing back to this episode because this is where it all starts. So you heard it here, guys. If you want to increase your marketing this year or beyond, your attraction is a reflection of your certainty. Doesn't matter where you're at. Work ways to really leverage your certainty to the next point, and I guarantee you'll start to bring more news in. Whether that means you're doing it through internal methods and you want to get more internal referrals this year and do the parlay effect like I chatted about in the front end of this episode, whether that means, you know what, we're going to make a point to get out in our community more and do external marketing, or whether you kind of said, no, you know what, this is the year we're going to get our digital dialed in. All three of those aspects are going to depend on it. So you're awesome, Dr. Lona. We appreciate you taking time out and helping us out in your vacation. If I'm someone that's thinking about, oh man, I need some help with my marketing, what should that person do?
Reach out to any one of us. We'd love to help you. We'd love to have a conversation.
Yeah, we'll leave a link, guys, in the show notes. Definitely get on the phone, have a chat to either Dr. Lona or myself, and we'll work out a plan about, all right, where are you at the moment and what's the best way to get you to the next level and really kind of get you scaling and growing. All right, I'll let you get back to some beach and vacation time, and I'll catch you really soon.
Sounds great.
Catch you guys.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like the podcast, please subscribe, share with your friends, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, please click the links in the show notes to schedule a call.